There is a concept known as the mirror principle, which is most likely responsible for most people's success, those who have become successful, even if some of them aren't even aware of it. This is an ancient principle that has been used for generations by those who have been in the know, who have been a part of certain societies, who just however they've come across it have discovered this principle. And when applied, it can completely transform your life, regardless of what situation you find yourself in now. I, for myself, used the mirror principle to go from broke and homeless at one point to being able to travel around the world working for myself. So having schedule freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. I built up a six-figure business and ultimately living a very fulfilling life that a younger version of myself wouldn't have even thought was possible. And this principle is one of the main ones I focused on that helped bring the magic into my life. And it wasn't just me. I'd heard other stories of those who had applied the mirror principle and have even worked with clients using this principle with them to help them get phenomenal results in their life too. And so in this video, we're going to be covering more deeply what the mirror principle is and of course, how to apply it effectively. Now, if you would like to leverage the mirror principle as effectively as possible and also the other higher universal principles, I just created something that I think you're going to really enjoy at a very affordable price. It's called Mold Your Reality, where we have created a community and program that is going to hold your hand in being able to do this at a very effective level with coaching, with different programs, and so much more that you can learn about through the first link down below. If that link isn't available yet, we're just getting a few things ready and you can just join our email list to find out exactly when we launch, which if we haven't already, will be very, very soon, most likely within a week or two. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the mirror principle in this video, giving you a little more information on what it is and how to utilize it effectively in your life. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, this is something that has been known about within very select circles since basically ancient times. We could even trace it back to ancient Egypt, and even if it was called something different or was known by a different name, essentially this concept was still used by those who were in the know. Now, there were very few who were in the know. This information and knowledge and ability to use it was very coveted and certainly hidden. But luckily, in this day and age, these so-called secrets have been more unraveled and revealed to the general public. Now it's just about whether you're going to use it or not. Now, if we were to make it as simple as possible and just tell you what the mirror principle is at the simplest level and then explain exactly what this means, it would be this: the outer world follows the inner world. Essentially, what's going on within you, which will explain what that means, is reflected or mirrored outside of you in your external or physical world. Now, that might be confusing at first if you've never heard of this topic. Wait, you're saying that there's something beyond this thing I see of myself, my body, and my physical world? Well, there absolutely is. And one of the best ways I know to look at this is to think of yourself as a three-part being. Sure, you are physical. You live in a physical world, or so you think, but at least it presents itself as physical. You have five senses that help you perceive this physical reality. You have this body, you have this name, and you're operating in this physical space. But there are two other parts of yourself, to keep it simple, and we can just call this the mental part of you and the spiritual part of you. Now, the mental part of you is, as you could probably deduce, it is the thoughts, it is the imaging, the visualizations, that kind of part of you. These are not physical components of you, they're non-physical, but still something that you engage in and is a part of your being. Now, the spiritual part of you is something where you are connected to something greater. So this is your connection to the divine, to God, to oneness, whatever you want to call it. And you can also think of it like your energetic self. So an easy way to relate to this is through your feelings, through your emotions, or if we want to break down that word, energy in motion. Therefore, when you're thinking certain thoughts, you're activating certain things on the mental plane of your existence. When you're within certain feelings or activating certain energy or emotion in your life, you're activating certain things on the spiritual plane of your existence. Now, why this is crucial to understand is because you may be surprised to learn that the thing that influences your life the most, and this is where the mirror principle comes in, is that inner part of yourself, not the outer. And so that inner part made of the mental and spiritual is actually actually what affects the results in your life way more than the physical. And this is where the mirror principle comes into play. Like I mentioned, the outer world, which essentially we're saying the physical, all these things you're sensing with your five senses, the stuff that's showing up as stuff in this physical sense in your life, comes from the inner world. That means what is occurring on the mental and spiritual plane of your existence. And even if you're unaware of these two planes of your existence, they are still there and are still operating, but this just means they're operating unconsciously or unintentionally, which is probably why if you haven't been creating what you want in your life, that's the reason, because you've been unintentional about it and it's most likely not producing what it is you want. Now here's something that may actually blow your mind, and this is scientific data that shows that our reality, this physical reality, is actually not as physical as you think it is. It is actually 99.9+% empty space and energy. In fact, if you were to look inside the atom, which we've all know, or for the most part learned, is the building block of the physical world. So if we were to look at anything you see in this room or your room or even yourself under the right instruments, you would see that it's made up of these fundamental particles or these fundamental elements, and we learned that these were atoms. But if you were to go even deeper and look within the atom itself, would you be surprised to learn that an atom comprises of 99.9+% empty space or energy, and only about 0.00001% physical matter reality? And so the very thing that's supposed to be the building blocks of our physical is in and of itself mainly empty space and energy. It is mainly made up of what comprises the inner world, not what we call the outer world. So what does this mean? Well, what it means is that we have been putting our focus on the wrong things. Most people are going out there just trying to be the physical, influencing the physical. But that physical is made up of what's contained within the inner. And so if we want to change our physical world or our outer world, we need to go inner first. Like the mirror principle states, the outer world follows the inner world. And when we become more intentional about shaping that inner world in a very specific way, which we're going to cover, it starts to reflect in the outer world, because the energy and the thought and everything that you're now changing there starts creating this new energy that starts showing up in your life physically, and which once again is made up of those atoms, which are mainly empty space and energy. One way this was explained to me by a mentor that I thought was so brilliant and just resonated so much once I was very deep into this learning is that your physical reality is simply an energetic history. It is an accumulation of the thoughts and the feelings and how much you've connected to that higher part of yourself over time, then manifesting in the physical. The physical is the densest rate of vibration, meaning it takes a lot of time, right? So what thoughts, what feelings, how have you been cultivating that inner world is going to start determining what starts showing up or is reflected in your outer after enough time. So anything you see in your life is actually a history of how you have been doing that up until this point. So how do we start changing what we're seeing in the outer world through our inner world? Is we need to start changing our thoughts and our emotions, or which ones we entertain or dwell upon in the inner world. And this really does begin to work like magic. Again, with the clients I've worked with, we have really held them accountable and made sure they've had the guidance to stick with it when it comes to cultivating the inner world. And every single time, for those who do the work and trust the process, almost seemingly these magical things begin occurring in their outer world. But it's not magic, it is simply cause and effect at a higher level. It is the mirror principle operating. It only looks like magic when you're unaware of what's really going on. Because they've changed things in the inner and they've changed them long enough and have consistently done those things, the outer has to, by law, start to shift to match what's going on in the inner world. So essentially what you cultivate inwardly will start to be reflected outwardly after enough time. Why does it take time, or it takes a little bit longer? Because the physical is the densest rate of vibration. That's why everything here appears solid. Even though we could argue that it's not, it appears that way because it's an accumulation, a denser rate of vibration, enough energy accumulated and kind of vibrating in a certain way to then take on this appearance of being physical. But we need to go behind the curtain and work on the inner world stuff to bring certain things about. Okay, so that is the thought behind the mirror principle. How can we start to put this into practice? So like I already alluded to, your words, your thoughts, and your energy go a long way to creating in the way that you want. Your actions do as well, but I'm going to throw a little caveat in there and say your aligned actions are going to do that. Because if you're just taking action for action's sake and you're throwing everything against the wall hoping something will stick, that's going to lead you down a pretty brutal path if you want to go down that way. Maybe something will stick every now and again, but this is what leads to burnout. This is what leads to health problems and breakdown in so many other areas. It essentially leads to high entropy, which means high breakdown or faster breakdown. So ultimately, we need to start cultivating some new practices that will allow us to cultivate the inner world. Most people are not used to thinking intentionally. They allow their thoughts to be hooked or taken for a ride by whatever's around them. They allow themselves to react to everything around them. So if something in their outer world goes away, they don't want it to. It could be something as simple as someone says something to them, they react. And those thoughts are typically not conducive to creating an outer world you dream of, right? Or the emotions you feel in those times as well. And so we need to become more intentional with this. And one of the best ways to do that is to start, in a way, almost feeding yourself better thoughts and better energy. And there's something called the mental diet that's going to help us do this. Now, when we talk about a physical diet, everyone knows what we're talking about. And usually the goal, or at least there's a range of goals that you're trying to accomplish when you talk about engaging in a physical diet. However, we can do the same for that mental part of our existence and also that spiritual part of our existence by going on a mental diet. It includes the spiritual in here, but I think it just sounds nicer as a mental diet. You see, the things you are consuming in your attention contribute to how you're being influenced on the mental and spiritual plane. The things you are watching, the conversations you are having, the thoughts you are allowing. These are all, in a sense, what you are consuming and how it is creating or influencing the mental and spiritual side of yourself. And so a lot of people are doing the equivalent of essentially eating junk food all of the time and not exercising and everything else, and then are wondering why their reality isn't the way they want it to be. They basically have a obese mental and spiritual part of themselves because they've been consuming junk all of the time. You know, they're on to Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts for hours every single day. They are, again, reacting all day long to everything that's happening around them, never being at cause, but always being at effect to things. And they have this bloated mental and spiritual diet that is creating that on the inner plane, which is them just being reflected in the outer plane. And because it's them being reflected in the outer plane, they keep reacting to that stuff, and it becomes this perpetual cycle where you are creating and reacting to that creation negatively, and then creating more of that, and then reacting to that creation negatively. And that's why a lot of people have this outcome or these results that they don't really want in their life. So here is the first thing we can do to shine the light of awareness on this so you can shift your mental diet. In the same way we would approach a physical diet, we want to start listing out, okay, what are the things I am consuming that are probably not good for me and I want to start removing from my diet. And so this is what I would have you do is get out a sheet of paper and just list off all of the things that represent junk food when it comes to your mental diet. For example, are you watching the news a lot? That's absolutely junk food for your mental diet. It's calibrated usually at fear or anger, which is a lower level of consciousness, which comes with lower level thoughts. Are you, again, on social media so much to the point where you don't even know where you are when you come out of it? What are those things? You know, what are certain patterns of thought that come up for you that keep hooking you and you just go unconscious? You want to become aware of these things because when you become aware, the next time that comes into your reality, you'll be able to take a step back and make a choice on whether you want to eat that thing and consume it or not, right? In the same way, when you're on a diet and you're presented with, say, a donut, you're more aware of the choice you're making and you have a better chance of rejecting that because you want something else or you want to maintain the good physical diet. So find out what those are, and then the easiest way to make sure you don't engage in these things is to remove it from your environment. So if there are certain things you can remove from your environment so you don't engage in them, I would recommend doing that. One of the easiest is if you use certain things on your phone that distract you, that create junk for you in your mental and spiritual diet, remove them. remove them. I promise you, you will not miss them after a few days. It can feel like you're, oh no, I don't want to give up Instagram, I don't want to give up TikTok or whatever else it is, but I almost promise you that you won't miss it. Now, if you post things on there and create and whatever else, then you can find different ways around this. Obviously, I create, so I found different ways to block things on YouTube's My Thing, so the YouTube homepage, the suggested videos. So when I'm on YouTube, basically, if I'm going to watch something, I have to search for the exact thing and then watch it from there. I have to go to the channel I'm looking to watch and go directly there. So there are things called Blockside, and then there's Unhook, I believe is a good Chrome extension that does that for YouTube and maybe some other social media. But again, take out the temptations. In the same way, if you were eating a healthy diet, you wouldn't have donuts and chocolates and chips and all these different things in your house. Now, that's the removal part. We also want to start introducing things that are going to help you and contribute to a healthy mental and spiritual diet. Now, the first thing is to start creating some new habits. This one can be very obvious, but what I want you to do is start very, very small. A lot of times people get motivated and inspired, so it's like, oh yeah, I need to create a new morning routine. I'm gonna do this 2-hour morning routine. I'm gonna meditate for 45 minutes, and I'm gonna do some intense breath work for another 45, read for 20, and then, I'm going to say affirmations out loud for 10. You will stick to that maybe once, and then most likely fall off. And so what you wanna do is create agreements with yourself that 100% you will keep, but you can build on when you keep it. So here's an example. Let's say you want to create a habit of reading every single day. Don't say I'm going to read 10 pages every single day, because you might break that agreement. You might miss out on that. But instead say, I'm just going to read a sentence from this book every single day. Now, when you read that first sentence and you have the time to do it, do you think you may go beyond that one sentence? Absolutely. Some days you may start reading that 1 or 2 sentences or whatever you create for yourself here, and you might end up reading for 30 minutes. Other days you may only be able to read that sentence. Maybe you forgot and it's the end of the day and you go, well, I just have to read the one sentence to keep the momentum going, and you're able to do it, right? But by creating a habit in this way, you start removing a lot of the negative emotion that happens when you don't follow through on the habit, because you created this really like, I'm just gonna really go for it and whatever else, but it creates this weird energy when you don't hit it on a given day. So create habits and start creating habits where you can stick with it. I'm gonna meditate for 1 minute at least every single day. Look, some days you're going to meditate for 30. Some days you'll meditate for even longer than that, to the point where you have a habit and you don't have to worry about only doing it for 1 minute. But you start out that way because you will never miss that so long as you remember. It could be 10 o'clock, you're about to go to bed, you forgot to do it, and you're like, oh crap, okay, well let me just take a second or a minute to meditate for a minute. So that's how I recommend doing that, introducing these little micro habits in that way that you can stick to, that will create momentum, and you will find that you're doing it longer or more than whatever agreement you've made. So again, doing it for meditation, doing it for reading, introducing these more positive habits that would feed your mental and spiritual diet in a very, very positive way. Now, again, if you want to get help with this, basically guidance, and make sure you follow through with this to the point where your mental diet is pristine and you are then attracting what it is you want in your life, you can check out our new program, Mold Your Reality, down below. Again, I created this because I wanted to make something that was affordable, that basically anyone could enter and get just world-class information, coaching, and just results. Ultimately, that's what it's about, helping you get results. So you can learn more about that down below. We just opened it as we're releasing this video, so we also have an early bird price, so you can get it even cheaper than what it's going to be later on. So check that out down below. Now again, over time, by improving this mental diet, it's going to be planting essentially new seeds in your inner garden that you're cultivating that are going to germinate, grow, and produce fruit that will then be reflected in the outer world. Now, learning more about how our reality actually operates and how the simulation really works, and the fact that we are in something that's akin to a simulation, a very advanced one, is going to go a long way to you learning this and implementing it and integrating it even faster. So I'd go watch this video next. That's going to give you some incredibly valuable insights and tools that are going to help you do exactly that.